Well, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. Welcome. My name's Nick. I'm here from Glowforge, and I'm going to be taking you through about an hour of printing today, starting with something quite simple and building on our skills as we go through to some other prints. I think we'll be able to get to maybe 4 or 5 prints today, and we're going to look at a number of different techniques and materials, tips and tricks, that kind of thing. I've been at Glowforge now for about 7 years. I've done quite a few of these, so hopefully I'm pretty set to answer any questions that you might have. And on that note, any questions that you do have, please put them in the chat. My team's going to send them through to me in a Google Doc on my screen right here. And hopefully, if I can manage to present and print and do all the other things at the same time, I can answer some of those questions as we go through. Now, I know there's sort of questions that come up all the time, so I'm going to try and hit those early on. But anything that you have that you're interested in knowing, leave it in there. And worst case scenario, if I do a terrible job of that, we have a Q&A session at the end, so we can get to any questions that I didn't hit. I know that we normally have a mix of owners and prospective owners in these classes, so I'm going to go right ahead and get into a print. So those of you who haven't experienced Glowforge firsthand can see exactly how it works. And it is gift giving season, so I thought we could start with something simple. I have a gift here for a friend. It's beautifully wrapped, but it's missing, well, the gift tag, the personalization, that personal touch that shows that it's for them. So we're going to create one of those right now, and I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is. So to start, we're going to jump over to the Glowforge app. Now I'm going to go into some detail about this in later prints, but for now, let's just get rocking and rolling. Now, this is our dashboard. It's a website. It doesn't matter if you're on a Mac or a PC, whether you want to use your tablet. If you can access the web, you can use a Glowforge. Right here, I have basically a number of designs from the catalog, plus all the designs that I've been working with too. And I can also access the catalog designs from here as well. So I'm going to search for a gift tag and see what comes up. Now, there's one in here in particular that I've always quite liked, and it's, oh yeah, this one here, second one, with this little floral design underneath. And all I have to do is click on that to open it up in the Glowforge app. And you can see how quickly this is moving along. Now, right now, what we're looking at is a digital representation of our design inside the Glowforge. And this is actually my favorite feature. This is called Live Preview. It doesn't look like much right now, kind of like a black square. And that's because, well, it is. Right now, we're looking inside our Glowforge, and there is nothing inside it. But watch this. I'm going to take a piece of material. This happens to be a piece of light basswood plywood. This is a standard sheet of proof grade, and we'll get more into that later on. But I'm just going to open the lid, pop that inside right there. Close that up. And then when we switch back to the app, what we'll see is that material will magically appear on the screen. Now this is going to scan for a moment, and there we have it. There is our material. Then I'm going to take my design, and we're going to select it and move it up to the top right over here. And this is because with my setup today with the cameras and things, this should give you the best view of what's printing. So, you know, this material, you can use it however you want. You can see how easy it is to drag and drop this around wherever you want it to print. But I'm going to stick to the top right, so hopefully you can see what's going on. And there is our print. We're basically already ready to go. But it's not really looking very special right now. I think you'll agree. So let's add a little personal touch. And to do that, I'm going to use a feature in the Glowforge app called Trace. To access it, we just hit the plus button right here, and we have a trace option. But first of all, I need something to trace. Now, you can trace almost anything you like, but I have a scrap of paper with this person's name written in a black marker on there. We're looking for something contrasty, so just a Sharpie on a Post-it, something like that would work just fine. I'm going to take this and stick it inside the Glowforge on top of our material like that. And if we switch back to our app, you'll see once again, we've got scanning in the top right, and this image is going to update, and there is the word Suzal. Now, this image right now is looking a little blown out. You can see how it's got that bright stripe. That's just because of the studio lights that we have above, but it shouldn't affect us right now. Let's see. So, simple as this. We click Trace. It's going to load a higher quality version of the image. Then we're going to select the part of the text that we want to trace. Oh, and it looks like I clipped the top of the L's there. That's a shame. Let's go back. And let's just do it again. Now, Wi-Fi here has been pretty good. We did some extensive testing yesterday, so I'm hoping this all works really nicely, but it's looking a little slow. So let's do it this way. Plus, trace. This time I'm going to zoom in so I can see what I'm doing. Drag around here. There's our design. We could place artwork up here. And in a matter of moments, what we end up with is a digital representation of that text. How cool is that? So you can do this with anything. It could be your kids' drawings. It might be a business card with a logo on, something like that. It might be a cool pattern that you've seen in a magazine. If it's nice and high contrast, you can pop it in the printer, scan it, and then use that to embellish your designs. So we're going to move into the compositing stage of this. And all that means is, let's make this the right size and pop it where we want it to go. So I can stick this in here just like this. And you can see how quick and easy this is to do. I'm just dragging and dropping, resizing. If you've used, anything like a PowerPoint or Microsoft Word, you'll be very successful with this software. And there is our design. That looks pretty good. Now we've got a lot of other options that we can dig into as well. The basic ones right now would be size. Now I know this is a catalog design. We've chosen a pretty standard size, I would say, for a gift tag. But if I'm interested to know exactly what it is or control it, I can just click on this little ruler icon down here, and I can see that's about 2¼ inches. 2⅛ of an inch, and that seems to be about the right size for the box that we have here that we're going to embellish. Next step. Now normally the QR code that's in the bottom right hand corner of the material here would be recognized by the Glowforge, but unfortunately because of our studio camera lights, it's causing some problems, but don't worry. That QR code will eventually be destroyed as you start to print on this material and you cut through it. If the QR code is not available, all you have to do is go up to the materials menu right here, click into here, start typing the material that you have, which is light basswood plywood, click on that, and that's it. All those settings have been applied. So next step, final step, we need to position this print somewhere where it can print. You see how as I'm moving this around, the colors change? That's basically telling me that some of this design is off the printable area. I'm going to move it so all the lines are solid. I'm going to hit print, and that's it. We're ready to go to print our gift tag. Now, if I wasn't talking so much during that, you could see how quick and easy it would be to get that design, add the embellishment, and then send it to print. That maybe took, what, a minute and a half, something like that? And the print itself is normally pretty quick as well. I don't recall exactly how long this particular one takes, but one nice thing about the software is the Glowforge is going to calculate how long that is. It's going to figure it all out and then send the information back down to your computer to set your expectations. So 3 minutes right there. And 3 minutes for a completely custom personalized gift tag that's going to make someone's day. That seems worth it, right? So over to the Glowforge. We've got one button on this machine. Well, two if you count the power button. But this one here flashing like this is telling us that there's a print ready to go. I'm going to press that, and that's it. We're away. And you'll see everything start to happen. Now that black square that you see moving around right now is called the printer head. This is where the laser exits and hits the material. And you can see that little glow right there. Oh, that's a really good view, actually. Excellent. My producer, Mike, was playing about with camera angles yesterday, figuring out the best way to show you what's going on, and that looks really good. Excellent. But hopefully what you can see there, because we sneakily managed to keep the piece of paper with Suzelle in the bed at the same time, is how accurately represented that handwriting is in the engrave. Now, I know some of you might be watching on phones and tablets and things, so I'm sorry if it's a bit small, but I promise you it looks really good. And once it's finished, I'll take it out so you can see. Engraving is the thing that takes the longest with anything on the Glowforge. You can see how the head's moving left to right, side to side, kind of like a dot matrix printer, working its way up the design line by line. But once we get to the cutting stage and the scoring stage, you'll see things go much quicker. And while that's happening, I could explain that Glowforge does essentially 3 things. We've got cutting, which is nice and simple, just like a pair of scissors all the way through your material. And for most materials, up to about a 1/4 inch thick, Glowforge can cut through in a single pass, so it's nice and quick. A score is just the same as a cut, but it doesn't go all the way through. Imagine taking a fine tip marker and drawing on the surface to leave a consistent, thin, fine line. That's scoring. The cool thing about that is we can actually manipulate the masking tape that's on top of the materials, and we'll dive into that a little bit later. And then the third one is engraving. And there's lots of different types of engraving, but something like this is what we call a raster engrave. If you upload a JPEG or a PNG, a photograph or a logo, something you download from the web, you can engrave it, create a real version of it in your Glowforge. And that's looking really nice from my perspective right here. We've got a bit of a floral design going on. We've got the text. And we can print this in 3 minutes. Now, I'm also going to show you another thing, because we know this time of year, we're probably not sending a gift for one person. It might be multiples, right? Or maybe you're an Etsy seller and you have a small business and you're looking to add this item to your shop, or maybe even just ship your goods with a special personalized gift tag for the recipient. Well, in the software, it's very easy to grab this and copy and paste it as many times as we like. And we can fill this sheet with these gift tags. And we can personalize each one differently. We can make the same one each time, entirely up to you. And you can press print and send that whole sheet in one go. Now, if we take that one step further and we're looking for a truly magical experience, imagine you have your first stall at a craft fair. Maybe it's something like Urban Craft Uprising like we have here in Seattle. You take your Glowforge along with you. You could absolutely do that. We have a filter package that comes with it that you can purchase with the printer, so you can print indoors very safely. And imagine if you took a whole bunch of these gift tags, but blank, to that event. You print them all out, but you omit the actual name part itself. And then you have the buyer, the purchaser, come up, write that name on a Post-it note with a Sharpie, and put it in the Glowforge, and there and then with you, create this gift tag. You know, it's only going to take about a minute or so. It's really quick, but that experience would be so magical for that person. So lots of options, great ways to make money. But there we have it. It's all done. Once the head's returned, we can open up the printer, and I can pick this up and take it out of the bed like this. There we go. Now it's not hot to the touch, so I can grab this right away. And if I put it on top of the printer right there, I think you can see that. And there's, if I move it down there, we can see our results. Now you might notice that that's kind of schmutzy right now. And that's because proof grade materials have a masking tape over the top of them that captures the waste material as it's being engraved, so that we don't spoil the finish underneath. Now, I'm not sure if I can do this particularly gracefully, but let me try. If I get my fingernail in here, just like with a vinyl cutter where you might be weeding, we can peel off that masking tape like that. You see it? And underneath is a pristine piece of material. And these proof grade materials have been sanded and finished with a furniture grade finish, so they look perfect right out of the print. So there's no sanding, varnishing, or anything like that that needs to happen. And so from there, we've got our gift, we have our tag, you know, we can add some ribbon, whatever it might be, but all of a sudden within, you know, less than 4 minutes, say, we have something that looks extra special for that recipient. So that's print number one. Very quick, very easy, very flexible. And you can take all of those principles and apply them to almost anything. Now I'm just going to jump into our Q&A doc right now. We don't have a ton of questions in here at the moment, actually, but there's a couple, so let's get to those. Can you use only proof grade in your printer? Absolutely not. You can print on hundreds and hundreds of different materials. The proof grade store that Glowforge operates has a number of materials in there, but it's certainly not exhaustive. It's expanding all of the time, but there's lots and lots of things that you can print on, and we're going to get further into that in a little while. And then secondly, what file types do the software allow you to upload? Well, you saw me just there in the Glowforge app create everything within the app itself. So there was no other software that was required. But if you prefer to work in something else, and it could be anything from PowerPoint, it could be the Cricut software, it could be the Adobe Creative Suite. If you can export a PDF, you can print on Glowforge. Now, Glowforge will also accept SVGs, it'll accept DXFs, you can use JPEGs, PNGs, basically any file type that you're likely to come across or create with any of the software that you like to use. Now, I will note, if you're looking to cut something with Glowforge, you'll need to be using either an SVG or a PDF. That's the only important caveat. But if you're engraving things on things, logos, text, that kind of stuff, you could absolutely go into Microsoft Word, type something out, save it as a PDF, upload it to Glowforge, and then engrave that onto an object that you put inside there. All right, a couple of other questions. What's my favorite material to print on? That's a really good question. I would say probably, sorry, I can answer this in a few different ways. I really like engraving coated metals because I think that looks really impressive, and the result is a permanent mark with a ton of detail. And we're actually going to do that a little bit later when we engrave a flask. Sandstone is really interesting too, because if you hit that in different ways with different levels of power, you can create both light and dark marks. So you can create this sort of two-layered design. That looks really cool. And then I'm actually a leather worker by, well, as a hobby, if you like, before I joined Glowforge. And I used a lot of acrylic to create debossing stamps. So instead of engraving directly on the leather, I'd create a hard plastic stamp that they would then push into the material to create a design. And so I used a lot of that too. All right, let's move on to our next print, and then we'll come back to some more questions. Hopefully that was helpful. Now, our next print is going to be something that we can use to add to our little Christmas village that we have over here. It's going to be another catalog design, another nice and simple print. And again, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. It's going to take a little bit longer, so it's going to give me an opportunity to talk through the machine and some of the materials and answer a few more questions as well. So let's go back to the app. In here, we're going to hit the little home button here to take me back to my dashboard. And then down here, I've got our trees. Now, I like this particular design because of the rattan kind of look and feel that it has. I think they're very nice, very simple. They fit together with no glue. It's just two layers that kind of slots, if you like. There's no instructions needed, nothing fancy, but you can make these however incredible you want. Now, I have made these in a whole bunch of different sizes, but we're going to go with the size that the catalog designer recommended this time around. And I'm going to find another piece of material. Here we go. Now, with our materials, we don't have to use this just once. That was a terrible sentence, but I think you know what I mean. Once we've used this, we don't have to throw it away. We can continue to print on that same piece. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to throw it back in there once again. And you could almost literally throw it in there. You do not have to be particularly accurate about this at all, because you can compensate for any slight misalignment in the software if you want to. We have rotational tools in there that'll take care of that. So here we have our design. Here we have our material. Again, I'm just going to drag and drop that. If we wanted to copy and paste, we absolutely could. These two halves are separate, so we can arrange them however we like. And there's one other step that we could take here if we really wanted to. We've got lots of shapes within another shape here, so we could actually right-click, choose Ungroup, and here we can actually separate out the individual shapes in the middle if we wanted to remove a couple, say to add some personalization or to change the shape in some way. I'm going to keep it as is for now. I'm going to undo that. Here we have our design. We have our material selected, light basswood plywood. We have our cut settings in there. We have got no instructions that we need to do. We can just hit print. And so just like last time, the laser head, this piece here is going to come across. It's going to take a bunch of measurements of the material. It's going to do some calculations, take care of a lot of things that normally you would have to do as a user by hand. You'd have to manually adjust that lens height. You'd have to manually focus the machine. And whereas that stuff isn't difficult, it's tedious. And we're all prone to human error from time to time, especially if you have some rush orders coming in. But it's done those calculations, it's set the machine up, it's figured out how long our print's going to be. This one looks about 6 minutes. Now this is all cutting in this particular case, but 6 minutes to cut all of that out in one pass, that's pretty cool to me. So button is flashing once again. We'll hit that, kick off this print, and then we'll see how this one comes together. Now the reason I chose this particular print is because of the different treatments that we could give it. The nice thing about Glowforge, and this is what, when I'm giving demos, this is what I'm always trying to convey to people. You don't have to do everything in a single way. There's no instructions that you need to follow verbatim, so to speak. Like, this designer has offered this design in this form, but you can absolutely put your own spin on it. And I think that's the aha moment that I hope everybody gets to eventually with Glowforge. And to give you an example of that, this designer's intent was to cut all of those individual shapes out in one go. And you can see how quick that's going. You can see those little pieces dropping through to the bottom. But what if we did something a little bit different? This is the essentially the result that we're going for with this particular tree. It's two halves that slide together just like this. And as you can see, they've been cut all the way through. But we could take that same design like this, and you notice that we don't have any holes in this right now. If I put it maybe onto our angle camera, you might be able to see a little better. Yeah, there we go. I actually used a score setting instead of a cut setting for those internal shapes. Now what that means is I can take, again, if I can do this gracefully, the masking tape from selective areas. So for example, around the outside, you see how that's peeling up and it's leaving behind a little bit of the masking. I can then apply paint across the entire thing like this. And then I can peel up just the internal pieces like this to reveal a very, very highly detailed stencil-like effect. So taking that same design, applying a bit of paint, getting creative with the way that we use it, we can create an entirely different look. Now, of course, we're printing on wood right here, but you don't have to do that at all. You could mix and match with materials like acrylics. So for example, here we've got some proof grade acrylics in some Christmas colors. I just cut the corner off these right now so you can see the colors, but you can see how vibrant they are. But you could absolutely take that same design and print it in green, which would look really nice as well. Or if you want to get really wild, you could take one, print it in green, take another one, print it like this. You could take the waste pieces from the wood, so all these little holes that you cut out, and glue them into the holes of the green, and vice versa. So you end up with a wooden tree with green details in the holes, and a green tree with basswood details in the holes. That's another way that you could approach it as well. So you can see how quickly and easily you can take a single design, a very simple concept, apply your own creativity to it, and create something that's really awesome. Likewise, I mean, if we like this particular design, maybe we wanted to create this into a gift tag. So what we could do is we could jump into our software right here. Now I'm getting carried away. Well, let me just copy and paste this one. Let's rotate it like this. Let's resize it like this. We could then go to our shape tool, get a circle, shrink that down, drag that over here. You see how quick and easy this is? Position this where we want. Let's say this is where the ribbon might go through. And there we potentially could have a very simple gift tag. Or we could jump into our text tool like this. We could add some text. We could put that text down at the bottom, whatever that might be. We could shift this up here. And then we could use a tool called the outline tool, which is this one right here, to create an outline around all of that and create a completely different design. This is just going to think for a moment. We have a lot of control with these tools, by the way, as well. Right now, this is defaulted to 1/4 of an inch of an outline, but we can adjust this number after the fact to be as big or as small as we like. And you'll notice as well, I'm in that same design, that same browser that I'm using right now to print. So you can absolutely work on a design while the Glowforge is printing at the same time, which is pretty awesome. All right, let's jump back to our questions. Let's see. Oh, my favorite thing that I've ever made. That's a good question. I think actually, you know, I meant to put it in my pocket and I left it at my desk. But the wallet that I carry around every day, I think would be my favorite thing that I've ever made. Mike, would you mind just running to my desk and grabbing my brown wallet? It's just in front of my monitor. Remember I talked earlier about how I used to do leather work? Well, when I did that back in the day, I was making a lot of watch straps and I was cutting everything by hand and doing everything manually. Thanks. When I joined Glowforge, I created this. Let's put this down. Now, I've had this now for almost 7 years, and you can see how well worn this is. But that design that's on there right now, that was printed on a piece of acrylic and then pressed into the leather, so it's debossed. I've got the same on the back. And then this also has a, I don't want to accidentally show my credit cards, but it has a little ejector on the back here too, which pulls the cards out. And all of the panels for this, and the stitching holes as well, and all these little details on the back, they were all made using the Glowforge. And all I had to do was basically lace it together like a tissue. And so I think this, in a small object, sort of encapsulates a lot of what you can do with this machine. Like you can create something that, if you were to buy it in a store, you know, could cost anywhere between, say, $50 and $150, depending on the material and the amount of time and effort that you put into it. But this used a whole bunch of materials, different techniques. I made the same thing out of cardboard to begin with, so I could test out the size and the shape and make sure I was happy with it. And that was all done using this. The tool that I used to hold the leather while I stitched it together, a stitching pony as it's called, that's actually a design that's available in the Glowforge catalog. I printed that on the Glowforge as well. So I think this is probably one of my favorite things. Next question, how difficult is it to set up the Glowforge? Well, if I was to set one up after doing it a couple of times, I would say it would take me between 5 and 7 minutes. Really, really quick. Now you're gonna need a friend to help you lift the Glowforge out of the box because it's kind of big and heavy, but after that, don't need any help at all. For somebody who's brand new to the Glowforge and who might have, you know, feelings of trepidation, I totally understand that. It's a giant thing, kind of expensive.
We can't hear you now. Sorry, everyone. And so while we're having this quick moment, just want to remind everyone that this class is being recorded and will be available on Monday on michaels.com/classes, as well as Michael's YouTube channel.
All right, how's that?
That's better. Wonderful.
Amazing. All right. Felicia, do you recall where I was when the audio cut out? What I need to recap?
I do not remember.
Don't worry, no problem. We can move on. I know we were talking about setup, so I could just finish that thought. Essentially, it is very simple. You take it out of the box, you plug it into power, you vent the Glowforge either into an air filter or out of the window. You switch it on, and then you tell it what your Wi-Fi is, and then everything else happens automatically. It's as simple as that. We have videos on support.glowforge.com if you want to see exactly what that process looks like. Take a look on YouTube. There's hundreds of unboxing videos as well. It really is very, very straightforward. All right, this print's finished, so let's take a look. I'm going to open this up. Once again, it's not hot, so I don't need to worry about touching it. I'm hoping that I can show you this cool. This is always very satisfying when these pieces fall out like this. Pop that down there. Let's take this out. There's no real reason to do this, it just looks cool. But there is our design. So you can see how simple that was. We have our two pieces right here. They're still masked, so we can peel that masking off. We can then paint them, we can use them as is, but they just slot together like this. And there we have our Christmas tree. We have our second size here. And I think these, along with other designs, work really nicely together if you're interested in creating that sort of Christmas village. And I should say, all of these things that you see on the table are, aside from maybe a couple of exceptions, available in the catalog. These two houses, for example, that's one design. This is the original size. We just made it about, what, 55% bigger, something like that, and printed a bigger version. This one here is super cool. Look how detailed this is. This is a pretty recent submission. Oh, it's maybe it's maybe too big to show. Yeah, I'll just hold it up instead. But if some of you have seen these before, this is one of those German heat-powered carousels. You put candles around the side. We have battery ones for the studio for obvious sakes, but this will spin just from the heat of those candles. And these things are very expensive to buy, but this is something you can download today from the catalog and print. I think the only additional thing you need is a piece of string and a bamboo skewer. But look how beautiful that is. It's incredible. All right. Let's take a look. Oh, the largest thing. Excellent question. So let's talk a little bit about materials then. That's a good segue into that. And we talked about proof grade already. And proof grade materials is a line of materials that we at Glowforge have created for this machine. You're not forced to use them at all, but we've taken a lot of time and care to figure out exactly what's in them, to make sure they print perfectly every time, to develop the settings that you need to print. And settings are a combination of power and speed. We'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit as well. We've also done toxicology testing on them. We've finished them, like we said, we sand and finish the wood, then we apply that masking tape and then that QR code. And they're available in a couple of different sizes. This is the standard size that most of you will probably use. This is a 12 by 20 sheet, and this fits in all of the models of the Glowforge. It's pretty big. You can see you can fit some pretty large things on there. Again, thinking about the sellers out there, if you're doing something like jewelry, imagine how many earrings you can fit on one sheet like this. The profit margins are pretty healthy. But if you do decide to go with the Glowforge Pro, which is the unit that we have here, this does actually have a slot in the front. So you're not limited by the size of the material that you can fit inside, because you can actually take that material and feed it through the front, just like this. So to give an example, if I just run over here, like this is something we created for an education shoot a while ago. This is a height chart, but you can see how big that is because it doesn't really fit on the frame. But we sell materials that are 4 feet long by 20 inches wide. And if you were to find a material that's 20 inches wide and longer than that, technically up to an infinite length, you could absolutely print on that too. And that uses something called pass-through, which is a special feature of the Glowforge Pro. And essentially all you do is design your design at the actual size you want to print it. So for example, this, we draw it actual size. And then in the software, Glowforge will print whatever it can fit within the bed, whatever fits inside here essentially. And then once it's finished, You move your material through. So I'll just lay it on top for now. Let's say we start like this. It's going to print this a little bit here. Then it's going to take some photos. We push it through a little bit by hand. Again, the amount that we push is arbitrary. It doesn't really matter. The cameras inside here will compensate for any inaccuracy of your sort of human movement. It's going to take photos of this, and it's going to print the next section. Take some more photos, push it through, print photos, push, print photos, until it comes out the other end. And that's how ProPass-Through works in a nutshell. We have videos on that if you want to look at Glowforge TV or the YouTube channel, but there's plenty of ideas and suggestions on there. This lamp, for example, up here, we printed using the ProPass-Through slot. Each of those splines is a little bit too big to fit on that 12 by 20 sheet, so we went as large as we could there. And also this stool. I got so much stuff I want to show everybody. This is kind of an old design that we've had around for a long time, but this was printed on ProPass-Through as well. It's very sturdy. You can absolutely sit on it. Right now, you wouldn't be able to see me do that, so I'm just going to hold it up, and I hope you'll take my word for it. But this was actually printed in draftboard as a prototype. I made a miniature out of cardboard, scaled that up to suit the thickness of this, printed it, and here we have a fully functioning stool. So ProPass-Through gets you the opportunity to print on much larger things. All right, let's move on to our next print. I'm watching our time. We've got about 25 minutes left. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is found objects and engraving on things that aren't just proof grade materials. Because, of course, proof grade is fantastic, but I know that we don't offer everything that everybody's interested in. So we could, for example, walk around Michael's and find a whole bunch of stuff on the shelves. We've got things like canvas bags. This is a glass bottle right here. These are little decorative tins. I do realize that not all of these are from Michael's necessarily, but there's a ton of stuff in the store that you can print on. We've got glass coasters. We've got slate coasters. And then the one that I'm going to show you today, we're going to use a black metal flask. I mentioned before about printing on metal. I think the result is really cool. And I know these are very, 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 it's very easy to sell them. If we're, again, thinking about making a little bit of money for Christmas, or maybe sending gifts to people that feel very, very valuable, this is a really good way to go. These are very inexpensive to buy as blanks like this. And as soon as you add in that personal touch, suddenly that value shoots through the roof. Now, this particular flask has been coated in a paint because the Glowforge itself is not powerful enough to engrave into metal. So actually, when we're engraving on materials like this, we're actually removing or discoloring the surface. We're not actually removing any material or turning metal into dust that's then going to fly out the back of the machine. I do see that we have a question about venting, so we'll get to that in just a sec when we start this print. But it's important to note that if you want to print on metal, you want to find a coated metal. So anodized aluminum would be a good example, like the lid of this MacBook here. You could absolutely throw that in there and you could engrave on that, or something like this or anything in between. Now, it's also important to note that with the Glowforge, we have a maximum amount of height that you can engrave onto. Typically, with what we call a crumb tray inside, we can only engrave up to about 1/2 inch of thickness. But don't worry, if you have something a little bit bigger like this, or like the glass bottle, we can take that crumb tray out. So I'm just going to move these to one side so we've got a little bit of working room, and I'll show you how this works. Now I'm going to open my lid like this, open the front door, and this black surface right here basically catches all of our crumbs. It's made of metal, it's magnetic, so you can hold down pieces of paper and things like that, but it's also removable. So I can just take this out, which buys me a bit of extra space. And with this out, we can engrave onto things that are up to 2 inches thick. So our flask would be a really good example of that. Now, what we need to make sure, though, is when we have our print inside, or our object, it needs to be at the right height. And the easiest way to do that, I find, is to close your lid, grab your crumb tray, pop it on top, and pop your object that you want to engrave on just behind it. And you can see there how this is a little bit lower than the top surface. Sorry, I chose everything to be black today. But the top of this right now is a little bit lower than this. And what we're aiming for is for the top of the object that we want to engrave on to be the same height as this bed. To do that, simplest way is to just grab a piece of material, could be a few sheets of proof grade. I happen to have this cutting board right here, and pop it underneath. And line that up again and take a look. And I know, looking at that, that's about right. We're just above the surface of this crumb tray, so this should be a good height to engrave on. Then all we do, let's take this off again. Oh, by the way, we call this a crumb tray because it's just like the one in your toaster. It gets full of crumbs, and you take it to the trash can, and you just shake it out, and the crumbs come out. You don't really need to clean it, but sometimes some little bits get stuck in there. We'll open this up, pop this in the middle. Close that door. There we have it. And there's our flask ready to be engraved. And you probably have gathered this already, but again, if you're looking to make these in bulk, you could put 6 flasks in there, for example, and engrave them all at the same time. Now, by design for this one, I created, oh, look, there's our gift tag that we started to talk about. You can see how I've added that outline. So we have our Christmas tree on the inside. We've got the outline, a hole for our ribbon, and then our text. That took, what, 35 seconds to change the design from this Christmas tree thing into a gift tag ornament. Very easy to do. I digress. So back to dashboard. This design I made a little earlier using a font that I found online that I thought was really nice. You can create this in anything you like, obviously. I've been doing this a while, and my preference is generally Adobe Illustrator, but anything will work. As we discussed, if you can save it as a PDF, it's absolutely going to work. And so this is the thing that I want to add to this flask right now. Now, to do this, there is something important that we need to know. We need to know how high that flask is. And the reason for that is if we want to print accurately, Glowforge needs to know how high it is to change this image so we can position things. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds, but just know if you're going to put something in here, it's good to know the height of it. Now, the cool thing is you don't need to measure anything at all because we have built a tool to do all of that for you. In the 3 dots menu, there's this thing called Set Focus. And all we need to do here is click on the object that we want to engrave. And what's going to happen is the Glowforge printer head's going to come across the top. And just like when we're using Proofgrade, it's going to take a measurement of that material, and it's going to change the image that we see in the bed in just a moment. And you'll probably notice that it shifts just a little bit. Did you see that jump? It's quite subtle. Maybe you missed it. But anyway, once we've done Set Focus, we know that we can print this pretty accurately. So all I'm going to do again is grab my design and drag and drop it where I want it to go. Now it's a little dark in here, I know, but I'm sure we'll be able to manage. Let's pop these here and here. And then we need to choose our material. Now, I don't have a stainless steel flask setting saved in the Glowforge app, but I do have a MacBook Pro setting. A MacBook Pros are generally anodized aluminum, and I know that this setting is going to work pretty well. Let's say you threw something else in here that you weren't familiar with, maybe a different material, something like slates, which we might not have a setting for either. Community.glowforge.com is a fantastic place to go to look for people who've been experimenting with different materials, because I can almost guarantee that somebody's already tried it and they've already shared those settings. And I mentioned settings before. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that right now by clicking into here. Now, what we're looking at here is the Silver MacBook Pro setting that we have saved in the application. And you can see it's just a combination of speed and power. Now, you don't need to worry too much about this at all, but basically by increasing the speed, the print's going to go faster. By increasing the power, we're going to put more power into the print. And by adjusting those, we can either get more detail, we can engrave deeper, and we can fine tune them. We have more detailed videos about how to develop these settings, so I'm not going to go too far into it right now. But here we can simply go in and drag those sliders around. For the most part, you're going to use the settings that are built into the app. But for those of you out there who are looking to get a little more granular, you can absolutely get the control that you want from here. And then we're just going to hit print once more. Now, because we use that Set Focus tool, a lot of the calculations that Glowforge normally does have already happened. So this next step's going to happen a little bit more quickly than it typically would do. Now, I forget exactly how long this print was. I think it might be sort of 9 minutes or so. Well, let's see. 11 minutes 45. That's all right. Buttons flashing again. I'm going to hit this. I'm going to kick this print off. And because this is a little bit longer, it's going to get us a bit more time to talk about some of those other questions that came up. And I know filtration was one of the important ones. So right now we're engraving on metal. And like I said before, we're just removing that microscopic coating. Oh, I positioned that just wrong, didn't I? Sorry. Once it works with everyone, you'll be able to see it. We're engraving a microscopic coating that's on the surface of this metal. So there's basically nothing coming off this material in the way of fumes. If we're cutting some wood or engraving leather or something like that, however, you're going to see a lot of smoke and fumes that are coming out. And that's what we need to vent. We need to remove that from Glowforge and from the building that you're in and vent it either into a filter cartridge or outside. Now, every Glowforge comes with a silver hose like this. And this, most people, at least just throw out of a window. That's what we have set up in the studio right here, a longer hose, just to keep things nice and quiet and simple for everybody who's on the call. But this hose can also be attached to this. Now, this is going to be a little unwieldy, but this is the Glowforge air filter. This is an optional accessory. You can see it's about the size of a recycling can. It uses a replaceable filter. And with this and the Glowforge, you can print anywhere where you have power and Wi-Fi. So if you're that Etsy seller who sets up in a physical location and wants to do live personalization for people, you can take that along with your Glowforge and print safely in that environment. Let's say you have a Glowforge and you're using it at home in a basement. There's no window in that basement, and so you can use the filter. Maybe you have a large room and you want to print in the center of the room and not the window, not at the edge of the room where the window is. Use a filter and you can print just there as well. So very, very cool, very, very helpful accessory. And like I said, the cartridges inside there are removable and replaceable. So once that fills up over a period of time, then you can replace that very, very easily. All right. Oh, the flask, yeah. So the flask is actually curved. Here's another example. If I hold it up against the white background, maybe, there you go. Can you see that? Now you are going to get the absolute best results with a piece of material that's absolutely flat. But to the human eye, something that is curved just slightly is going to look just fine. I think this one you've probably seen in some of our videos, but you can see that with this one here, that level of detail is really crisp and really nice. And there was nothing special that we had to do to accommodate for that curve. We just asked Glowforge to focus around the middle of it and just send it to print. That was that. All right, what else have we got? Does it take a lot to care for the Glowforge? Oh, great question. Short answer is no. It really doesn't. It's a very, very simple machine to look after. In terms of maintenance, there's really only two things that you need to do. One would be to remove any little bits from your print that are inside the machine. So like we talked about before, we've got this crumb tray with these little pieces on. You want to throw those away. You don't want the machine to get full up with those. That's just like having trash around your house. It can interfere with the way the machine works. And then secondly, it's every now and again, you're going to want to clean the lenses and the mirrors that are inside the Glowforge. Now, that sounds daunting, but it really isn't. There's basically, on the top of this print head right here, a window in the side, just there. There's a window in the side just there. And then there's a lens underneath the print head too. And every now and again, you'll want to take something like this. This is just an alcohol wipe like I would use to clean my glasses. And you just wipe off any schmutz from the lens using that. And that's about it. Now, we use these things around the office all the time. And we are pretty hard on them, as you can imagine. And this morning, actually, just before this, I helped Mary, one of my colleagues, take the carriage plate, which is the piece of metal that holds this black printer head here, off the Glowforge because the little fan that was in the back had started to get gunked up with some particles. But that was after hundreds and hundreds of hours of printing on thick plywoods. And again, the process was very, very simple. And if you're not feeling confident about how to do it, we can absolutely guide you through it. We have video tutorials and all of that kind of thing. So care, very, very straightforward. For the flask, did we have to treat it with anything? For this particular one, we didn't treat it at all because it's already a coated metal. We're just engraving away the coating. There are products that you can use on other metals and ceramics too. Surmark is one of the brands you might have heard of. And you spray or paint that on, and then you hit it with the Glowforge, and there's a chemical reaction that happens between that product and the metal. And then you wash off the excess and you have a permanent mark. I personally haven't actually tried it myself, but I've seen lots of people who have, and it seems to work very, very well. It's kind of expensive. It's about $80, I think, for a can, but you get a lot out of that can. So if you are looking to work with metals a lot, that could be a really good investment for you. Max height that you can engrave. So with the crumb tray in, maximum material thickness can be 1/2 inch. With the crumb tray out, maximum material thickness can be 2 inches. Now, just to be clear, was that question about how deep you can engrave or how high the object can be? Because if I got that wrong, let me know. You mentioned a video. Yes, we have loads and loads of videos. If you go to glowforge.com/watch, That's Glowforge TV. We have a huge repository of videos in there. And you can also check out our YouTube channel as well. There's tons and tons of different things. And if you're looking for other inspiration, our owners are incredibly productive on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. So I would take a look out there too and see what other people are up to. Can you adjust how close you cut to the edges of the materials? Yes and no. If I go into the app right here, I can show you this really quick. Once I select my design, you'll see we've got these, what we call curtains, these gray marks here. And these basically tell me where the printable area is. So we put 12 by 20 materials in, but we can't quite print to the very edge of those. However, if you have a Glowforge Pro, what you could do, if you really wanted to print right to the edge of materials, is take your material and pop it through the slot in the front. I'm not going to do this while it's printing, obviously, but you could pop it through the slot, and that way you could go absolutely edge to edge all the way around. Now that design, it's kind of hard to see in there, isn't it? There's a little bit of residue that's left after engraving this that we wipe away with a cloth. I promise you it's on there. It's looking really nice. So hopefully you'll like that in just a second. Let's take a look at our questions again. And the software. Oh yeah, the software is very easy to use. Let's dive into that a little bit because we've got 5 minutes left on this print. Let me go back to our print here. And let's maybe start on the design for the rubber stamp that we were talking about. This would be a really good indication of how the software works. Now, rubber stamps, as we all know, having been to the craft store many times, they're really quite expensive, right? So the ability to make your own from scratch, I mean, that's a pretty cool and powerful thing. And here we have a design that I've been making up that I did as a test earlier on. I'm going to show you exactly how I made it. Now, I'm going to put it, let's see. Sometimes these designs can be hard to see when you have something else in the bed. So bear with me. Hopefully this is nice and clear. But essentially, I've used the software here to create my design. And to do that, what I've done is use the text tool up here. So I can click into here. I can type a name, Wilson Family, for example. I can apply that. There's our text. And then from here, I'll try and get an area where it's clear for you to see. I can choose all these different fonts. And this is linked to Google Fonts, which are there's thousands and thousands and thousands of fonts in there. We have various different options for categorization. You can favorite the ones you really like by clicking the heart, and then you can go back to them at the top here too. But you can basically choose any of those fonts that you like. And what I did here is I chose one font for the family name, and then I chose a second font here for the actual address. And let's say you change your mind while you're using this. You can click on that font once again, you're back to your font size, and we can then start to manipulate that or change the fonts. We can also get really creative with it too. We've got text styles. You might think of these like word arts in Microsoft Word, but we can do various different curves and waves and creative things with it, which are pretty cool. Let's try that one, for example. And once that's done, oh yeah, that looks pretty cool. If you were going for like a vintage style logo, this could work really nicely. And from here, if we go into options, we have granular control as to how that curve looks. I can also go into my plus icon right here, and we can search for 3 million icons. So I think here I was searching for trees. Let's search for trees and see what comes up. We've got a whole bunch of different things here. Oh, there's so many. This is where I accidentally go silent when I'm giving a demo because I get carried away and I find something I like and I forget to talk. But to get an icon into your design, we just click on it, it's added, and then just like everything else, we can copy and paste it, manipulate it, change the size, and all of that good stuff. And so you can see how I might have built up this particular design right here. There's our tree that's just come in. So again, we can move that around, resize it, copy and paste. We also have tools to flip here as well. So let's say we want it to be symmetrical. We could flip that like that. So we have them looking the same. There's a ton of different things. But one of the cool tools, and this is what I really like, I'm just going to get rid of that for 1 second because I've got this design here, is our stamp making tool. Now here is a design that I made from all those different icons. Like I said, we've used the text tool, we've used the icons, and then I'm going to select everything and use this tool right here. Nope, that's the puzzle maker. I'm going to use this tool right here, the stamp maker. I'm going to click on this, and we've got a couple of different options. We can keep our original artwork. We can add an edge, which means it's going to cut around the rubber. And we can add some padding, so the amount of space between the edge of the design and the edge of the stamp itself. And then we click Create Stamp. And what that's going to do is transform that into something that's engravable. it's going to create the inverse of that, so a negative version, so engraving away all of the stuff that isn't the stamp. And then it's also going to flip it, because of course we've probably all been in that situation where we've made a stamp, but we accidentally made it so we could read it, and then when we stamped it, it was backwards. Maybe it's just me, but I've definitely done that more than once. But here we have a stamp that's basically ready to go. Right now it's ginormous, but that's okay, because we already know how we can shrink that down. We just shrink it down like this. And this is ready to print. This is the one that I was using earlier that I printed, and I can show you that right now. I realize we're running out of time just a little bit. Let me see if I can get this on the angle camera. I will show you this rubber printing in just a second, but that's the result. And if I get a stamp pad right here, I'm hoping this has some ink in it. Let's see, here we go. Let's use this piece of material. 1 second. I purposely made this quite small because I was trying to push the envelope in terms of the level of detail that you can achieve. And I think you'll agree it looks pretty good. I hope this shows up for you okay. You just adjust that, there we go, look. So like, there's the size of my finger, there's the size of that stamp. Very, very, very legible, very, very readable. And that printed in, I think it was between 3 and 6 minutes, something like that. So I'll show you how that works in just a sec. First of all, let's pull out our flask. So this is what it looks like right now. You can see where the engrave has happened, and it's just looking a little bit dull. But if we take one of those lens wipes that we just talked about a second ago, and give this a little wipe. Where's our, here we go, look. Let's get this in the right spot. See how it's looking a little dull? Well, if we polish that off, like that, you can see how much brighter that gets. And again, I chose this font specifically because of the level of detail that's in there, but you can see how crisp and clean that is. And at the top, we have this little icon of the wheat, and that's very, very fine as well. There we go, and you can see the level of detail that we got there as well. So very quick and easy to create something that you could honestly sell for a fair amount of money, or you could give to somebody and they think it was really awesome. All right, let's see, 5 minutes left. Let's jump right into the stamp. Cutting board out, we're gonna open this up. I'm gonna take our crumb tray. I'm just gonna brush those pieces off and I'll vacuum that later. Pop this back inside. Sorry about the noise. Let's find my stamp rubber. Now, this is a product that we don't have in the Proofgrade store at the moment, but if you search for laser safe stamp rubber on a search engine, you'll be able to find it. It's not very expensive and you get a lot of stamps out of one sheet. Throw that in there like this, close that down. Back to our software. Now, we talked before about settings and about how you might need custom settings for various things. Well, that is definitely true when it comes to stamp material. I found these particular settings from the Glowforge community forum, and all I did was reference what they were. You can see here, excuse me, on the left-hand side, we have our print step that relates to the rubber stamp, and I have our setting right here. I adjusted it based on the parameters that someone suggested. Then I gave it a name and I saved it. And so in the future, all I have to do is click on rubber engrave like that. We have our cut line around the outside as well. I'm going to use that set focus tool that we talked about, so we can focus the laser really accurately on the material. Laser head's going to jump across, take a measurement, do all that good stuff, and then it's going to tell us how long this is going to take to print. Oh, you know what I forgot to do though? Didn't put it in the top right. How are you supposed to see what I'm doing if I don't do that? So sorry. Okay. All right, so once again, we're going to grab our design. We're going to move it over. We're doing it live, everybody. Top right-hand corner, just like that. We're going to hit print. It's preparing. Now, because I open and close the lid, Glowforge doesn't know if I changed anything inside, so it's going to take those measurements once again. It's not going to make any assumptions, so it's going to be as accurate as it can be. It's going to do all of that preparation, all of those calculations. It's going to tell us how long it's going to print. We've got 4 minutes left of this, 3 minutes 26. Okay, that's perfect. All right, here we go. Now, stamp rubbers, you might be able to see in a moment, is a messy material to use. It does create a lot of schmutz. You can see how kind of dusty and dirty it is. Don't let that put you off. It just needs a little wipe and you're good to go. The results are far worth the effort and the cleaning that's required. But it is one of those materials that's kind of messy. Leather is a similar one, as is a natural felt. If you don't like the smell of burning hair, I would not recommend cutting felt on your Glowforge, but it does work very, very well, very, very well. Now, of course, we're creating the stamp part of this now, the rubber bit that we're going to put in the stamp pad, but we can use the software to create a handle as well if we wanted to. So while that's printing, and while Mike flips back and forwards, let's go back to my design. Where did I put it? Here we go, look. And let's bring in these shapes right here, and I'll show you how I made this very simple handle. Now, if I was to use a sophisticated piece of software, we could get real fancy with this. But last night, when I was thinking about different ways that you could approach this particular task, I was thinking, you know, a stamp handle kind of looks a bit like a chess piece, right? So if we go up to here and we search for, let's do chess castle maybe. We can find something here. Yeah, there we go. Look, that one looks pretty good. If I take this, like this, and then let's take the circle tool, like this, just circle on the top. I basically want to try and get rid of these little, they're called castlements, I think, right? The bits at the top. Let's line that up like this. This is where you can start to have a lot of fun. Then I'm going to use my outline tool to effectively join these together. This is a bit of a hack, a trick, if you like. I'm going to click Create New Outline, but I don't actually want a giant outline like this. I want a smaller one. So I'm going to set this to a really small value, 001. And what that's going to do is combine those shapes and create a separate outline like that. And there we used the shape tool plus a castle to create a handle shape that we can resize however we like. We can then find the size and the shape of our stamp, which is here. I'm going to click on that, go down to the ruler. We've got 2 inches by 2 inches by 0.551. So I can get a square like this. I'm going to change this to 2 inches by 0.551. And so I know that's the size of the actual stamp that I need. So this is going to be the wooden backer that the stamp sticks to. This is our handle. We probably want 2 layers, so let's copy and paste that. And let's maybe move some of this stuff out of the way that we don't need right now. Come on, computer, you can do it. We just got 1 minute left. Let's see. Sometimes when I'm on Zoom and doing this all at the same time, it takes a moment, but okay, let me refresh it. But essentially, I can copy and paste this particular design. I can make multiple copies of the actual handle itself. Let's see if that works this time. Yeah, there we go, look. Yeah, so that fire there, you don't need to worry about. There is something called an air assist fan inside the Glowforge that helps control anything like that. This particular material just tends to be a little flamey, but everything is controlled within the machine. You can see how nothing has persisted. The print is ready to go. But it is kind of messy, like I said. So what we'll do is take this out. And pop it on top of this cutting board. And I just gotta peel it out of here. And let me just show you, maybe on this close-up, can you kind of see there's a bit of dust and things like that comes off with this, like this. I use what's called a flux brush. They're the really inexpensive disposable brushes. I cut the bristles really short so they're really stiff, and I can just scrub out the dust that's in there. But essentially, that is our stamp right there. I don't really know the best way to show this to you in detail. There we go. That's probably pretty good, right? So you can see how small and detailed that is really there too. Now to join everything together, I used just some super glue and some plywood, and then I used some double stick tape to join the rubber to the plywood. Now I actually found this stuff, which I really like. It's called VHB, means very high bond. It's really sticky, but I like this because it's has a bit of thickness to it, and it's kind of spongy. You know how a lot of good stamps have got the rubber layer, then a sponge layer, then a solid layer? Well, this kind of acts like that sponge layer. And I glued all of that together to create this, which was really, 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 really simple. But absolutely gave me the result I needed. And when I was creating this, I was thinking about return addresses. You know, when you're sending Christmas cards and things like that, sometimes it takes a toll writing the same address over and over. So my family has a stamp made every year, or rather I make a stamp every year. The handle itself, I went really simple.
Once again, we're sorry, everyone.
Is that good? Are we back?
Yes, yes.
Okay, excellent.
And this time
Wow.
you were talking about the handle.
The handle, yes, thank you. So this handle here, we have obviously our design that we printed on the rubber, but you could absolutely print that same design on the top of the handle too. So if you had a drawer full of these stamps, you could very quickly and easily see what stamp this was. Or maybe you might need a this way up sign, or locate this part to here if you're stamping on a packaging or something. You have the control to do all of that stuff with Glowforge that would be kind of difficult if you went through a third-party supplier. But that was a race. We got through quite a lot. I'm hoping it was helpful and interesting. So let's go back to our Q&A doc, because I think we have some time for some questions. Tell me more about Puzzle Maker. Oh, yeah, of course. So this one is very, very simple. Let's go back to a new design from this, or rather, let's look at recent designs and see if we can find a photo. But the Puzzle Maker will essentially create a puzzle from something that you upload. I'm not sure if I have a photo on here right now. Right now I'm browsing through all the different things that we've printed in the past couple of weeks or so. It doesn't really look like it, but don't worry, we'll just pick something else instead. Let's do this. This will absolutely work. So let's say this is a photograph or a design or an image that we found. We can select it, hit the puzzle tool. We can choose the number of rows and columns that we need. Oh no, now we it's still mirroring here according to there. Sorry, it seems like my screen's not coming up right now. Our technology is telling us, trying to give us a hint about something maybe. Let's see. No, let me unplug mine and plug mine back in too. All right, let's give it a sec. Okay, it flashed. Okay, great. All right. So we took a design, could be anything at all, could be a photo, something like that. We put it into our app, made it the size that we want, and then we click the Puzzle Maker. Now here we can choose how many rows and columns we want. We can choose the padding again. We can add a frame if you want to capture all of those pieces. So let's add that. And then we can keep our original artwork if we want to. We'll create the puzzle. It's going to think for a little while. And then here is the puzzle that it's created. And let me just rotate this around like this. I realized I should have kept the keep original artwork on there because it's got rid of the engrave, but you just get the idea. Here we've got a little frame. Do you see this thin border? The idea is that we stick that thin border to this piece right here to create a base in which the puzzle fits. So once it's all together, you can kind of carry it all around in one piece. You could even display it if you wanted to. So really quick, really easy, really cool. How much power does it take? Do we need a special outlet? No, not at all. This will just plug into a standard 110 volt outlet, same kind of thing that you would use at home. I forget the actual specific wattage that it pulls, but it's no more than, say, a microwave or something like that. It's very, very easy to use. Let's see what else we have. Let me look at my agenda and see what else we didn't talk about. Any other questions that anybody has, please send them through in the chat. Let me take a look at some prints. Maybe we can talk about some of those too. Oh yeah, so remember that trace that we did earlier on when we created the Suzelle gift tag that went with the gift? Well, some of you may have seen it already, but that guitar that's behind us, that was made using that same tool. Now, the paisley design that you can see on there was actually hand drawn by one of my colleagues. We put it in the machine. This guitar was purchased as a kit. So we put the body inside after taking the crumb tray out. It fits perfectly fine. It's really great. And then we engraved that design using that trace feature. And then we just follow the instructions in the kit, put it together, and you have a completely custom piece. I mean, how cool is that? Just using that very simple, same tool that you could use to add someone's name to a gift tag. You can create a guitar with it as well. We haven't talked about paper or fabrics at all either. Glowforge works really great with fabrics. With synthetics, because we're using heat, it actually seals the edge so we don't get any fraying. Wax canvas, cotton, that kind of thing, cuts beautifully. This is thin felt. We made our own brand of hot sauce, and so this was the pennant flag to celebrate that. And this is just simple, thin kids craft felt, cuts beautifully, sticks really nicely, looks great. The mask that you see over there and the little rocket pack that you have behind us, that's made from this really fun corrugated card paper. You can definitely pick this up in Michael's and various other places, but that cuts beautifully too. And the vibrancy of the colors that you get, really fantastic. And talking about mixing materials, here's a good example of one here. We've got walnut plywood with white acrylic. You can see how beautiful the contrast is. You can fit a couple of these signs onto one sheet. And again, if you're a seller, you imagine having this set up. All you have to print uniquely each time is the name and these details here. So you can do a lot of this work up front. And then when the orders come in, just print the name, these extra details, assemble and ship. So you can very quickly and easily offer things like same-day shipping if you're looking to make some money. All right, let's take a look at our questions. Does it work with scrapbook paper or cardboard? Absolutely. We have settings in the app for normal copy paper. So the really thin white stuff that you put in your inkjet printer. That prints really nicely. Slightly thicker stuff works great too. Cardboard, we have settings for that. I personally really love to prototype on just leftover cardboard from shipping containers. This lamp, we actually made a cardboard version before we made the real thing. And actually, maybe Mike, if you could bring over that giant globe in just a sec too. Now, this is from our original video when we founded the company. You know, feels like 10 years ago now, but it must be 8 or 9. So some of you may have seen this before, but this is all made from cardboard. This is a 3D model of a globe that was sliced up into layers, and we cut and stuck it all together. That's pretty cool. How many users can be on one account? I don't know if there's actually a limit, to be honest. If you have a Glowforge, you can invite your friends and family to use it. Each of those persons will have their own account, so they'll have their own dashboard. They'll be able to download their own designs and create things. You won't be able to see their designs. They won't be able to see yours, etc. But I don't think there's an actual limit as to how many people can share a Glowforge. And then can you save your own settings? Absolutely. That's exactly what I did with the rubber settings. If I jump over to my software really quickly, let me just show you here. Let's say I wanted to create a new setting for a material I haven't used. We'll go to the forum, like we said, see if we can find out what it is. We'll go to manual, hit this. We're going to change our settings to whatever we think they might need to be. We're going to hit plus, give it a name. Let's just call this one setting, save. And there it is down at the bottom, so I can use it forevermore. If you want to make a change to it, because testing is key, and you may want to iterate on this, we'll just make an adjustment, hit save, and that saves the update to the setting as well. Really simple. And how thick of a material could Glowforge cut through? Well, that really depends on the material itself. Because of the focus height and the height of the material being a maximum of ½ inch, ½ inch is going to be your absolute max really to get through without affecting the quality of the edge and things like that. Foam, EVA foam that a lot of costume makers like to use. I've cut through some really thick stuff with that before. And I think it was cedar fence panels I was cutting at the weekend. And they were more than ½ inch thick. I wasn't really going for accuracy at all, and it took, I think, 3 passes, but I actually managed to get through with a really nice edge. And I think that must have been 5/8 of an inch thick, something like that. So you can certainly get some thicker stuff if you want to. So 11:11, I think that's about it. We covered a lot. Like I said, this will be available later for everybody to watch again if you want to catch up on anything. I believe we're going to have another class in the future at some point in time. And we also have all of those videos, like we mentioned, available on glowforge.com/watch or the Glowforge YouTube channel. So I suggest you check those out if you can. All right, Felicia, is that good? Are we happy?
That is excellent.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much again, everybody, for joining us. I don't know if there's an official goodbye spiel or anything, Felicia, or if I just wave until we fade to black or something. You tell me.
Not at all. So that will be good. So I am also going to just say goodbye and thank you all for coming.
Thanks so much.